Let's talk to Dr. Reza Hanzadeh, a West Asia expert and adjunct professor in political science, Middle East and Islamic Studies at George Mason University. Professor, thank you very much for making time for us and welcome to the broadcast. I just want to know from you, do you think United States and Israel have achieved their objective? And what direction is this war taking?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Do I believe they've... Yes and no. We have to look at this from many different angles. From Netanyahu's perspective, his objective, his goal is not necessarily regime change, but regime collapse. Any type of scenario where Iran is essentially imploding and in chaos and in civil war, or just any type of internal conflict to where the government seems to be inadequate or incapable of governing the country, that is a scenario that is to the best interest of Israel, because then they'll have air superiority over Iran, and as the experts say, they'll be able to mow the grass in Iran whenever they deemed, necessary, kind of like what they're doing in, like in Syria, Lebanon, areas like that. For the United States, I think Trump's approach is different. He doesn't go as far as seeking regime change or regime collapse, even though he might have said it. He says a lot of things, and he contradicts himself even within one speech. But if we look at the actions and kind of try to mirror that with his narrative, we see that he's trying to cross off 2 of the 4 talking points or stipulations that he had when he first went into negotiations with Iran. So if you guys remember, there was 4 things he wanted to cover: Iran's nuclear program, Iran's ballistic program, Iran's support of proxies in the region, and also Iran's treatment of its citizens. So with his approach, with Trump's approach, 2 of those 4 issues he wants to cross off, the list. One being Iran's ballistic missiles, and the second being Iran's support of proxies in the region. And we've seen, Iran's proxies in the region quite diminished. Either we have Hamas, who's really no longer existent, and the Houthis, who have put out statements saying that they're going to come support, Iran, and they haven't, and we're on day 12. And of course, Hezbollah, who's under attack, from Israel. So for Trump, even though we see conflicting, views, conflicting answers, contradictory statements, ultimately, I think what that gives Trump the opportunity is that because no one knows what his strategy is, what his plan is, what the scope is, when it's going to end, how much longer it takes, there's question marks around everything surrounding this conflict. That plays into the factor, or into the hands of Trump. It's in his best interest to keep everyone guessing, because then he can essentially invent a off-ramp. He can come up with a success story as to how he's accomplished what he set out to accomplish. And
let's talk about that.
Off-ramp.
Dr. Hanzadeh,
Sure.
Let's talk about that, because Mr. Trump has always insisted, ever since the conflict began, that Operation Epic Fury has been a success. In fact, Caroline Leavitt has reiterated that statement today. She says that Trump will determine when Iran will have the right to an unconditional surrender. When will that happen? Because Iran has put up a fight.
Yeah, that's right. So Iran has definitely put up a fight. But if we follow the military experts and we follow what's available, on the internet, we've seen that the attacks coming from Iran have been decreasing by the days. And we also have to pay attention to the domestic politics inside the United States, with the midterm elections coming up in November and gas prices increasing by the day in the United States.
Right.
And a lot of the voters in Trump's political party vote based on their own interests. And it's not just the Republican parties. The vast majority of people in the United States that are able to vote and do vote based on their interests. And it's what is occurring to them in that moment when they're at the ballot box and voting. So if it's the cost of groceries, the cost of milk, in this case it's the cost of gas, that's what's going to be driving their decisions on who to vote for. And Trump knows this. The people around him knows this. And that's why we saw Trump come out in a speech, I think yesterday, saying that this is going to be a short excursion and it's almost done, it's almost complete. He's trying to reassure
He changed that
voter
tone.
base.
He actually did an interview.
Right.
He actually did an interview with CBS, and he actually said that the war is almost over. But again, he changed that statement an hour later, because there have been mixed feelings and there have been mixed statements coming from the United States and coming from the president himself and also the Secretary of War, because now people world over are concerned about oil prices because they're skyrocketing, and Caroline Leavitt insisted that this will be a problem going forward, and this will be a problem that will be short-lived. That's according to her.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a great point, and that plays back into the the point I made earlier, where Trump doesn't want anyone to really know. Because imagine if he gave a timetable. Imagine 2-3 weeks ago he said, we're going to enter this conflict and it's going to take us 2 weeks and we want to check off these boxes. And after 2 weeks, if he didn't check off those boxes, then we're asking the questions, well, why did you tell us 2 weeks? Why did you have this list and you haven't you haven't checked off anything off your list, and you haven't, so this is a failed mission then, right? So either way you see this, there's going to be criticism, but from Trump's, from like the psychological, viewpoint or, strategy from the Trump administration, keeping everyone guessing plays to his advantage, because then, like you asked, when is this going to end? The answer is we don't know. But from what we can piece together from the things that Trump says, even though, like you said, they are contradictory, but we have to mirror it with his actions, it seems like my analysis is that Trump is finding a way to back out of weeks. I don't see this going months for him. I think in the coming weeks he's going to back out of this conflict and then let Israel and Iran continue the conflict between the two of them. And then Trump later on will re-enter the conflict as the peacemaker to try to end the conflict, kind of like what he did during the 12-day war in June.
That's a very interesting point that you bring up, because why is it so hard for the United States to actually say their timeline in this war? Because according to President Trump, he says that once he has a word with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, then they will decide when to end the war. Do you see some fault lines in that statement itself?
Yes and no. And I'll give you an example. Back during the 12-day war in June, if you recall how that conflict ended, Trump was on the lawn of the White House about to, go into his helicopter, and he told the press that he told Netanyahu to stop this conflict, and then he made a statement where he said the F word. He said neither one of these countries know what the F they're doing, and that showed that level of anger he had towards Netanyahu for not listening to him, and he essentially told Netanyahu, stop attacking Iran. And he did stop. Netanyahu stopped, and then the conflict ended on day 12. And I think that's the kind of, because even though I think Trump also mentioned how his decision on ending this conflict will be a mutual decision between him and Netanyahu. Of course, he's going to say that, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Again, like he always does contradict himself, that's going to be one of those examples where he might contradict himself in the near future, in the coming weeks, when he decides that pressure on him domestically is so strong that he's going to, like I said, invent an off-ramp where he's going to say this has been a success. Iran's has no more navy, they have no more air defense capabilities, they have no more missiles, they have no more factories. We the United States have essentially destroyed their entire military infrastructure, and that's a success for the United States, and then he'll just back out.
Doctor, but I think what remains for Iran, the United States might have destroyed everything, but Iran still has the IRGC, which is proving to be very difficult to dismantle. But Doctor, we'll have to end this discussion there. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.